Hello, a very warm welcome to everyone. And you are watching us live on the Facebook page of Purna Ecovision Foundation. And welcome to all the viewers of YouTube channel Apla Paryavaran. Today is our 59th webinar of the webinar series. So we have completed 59 weeks successfully in this webinar series. So today, the topic we are going to focus on is going to be conservation of threatened bird species in India. So recently in September, that is on September 7th, we had National Threatened Species Day. And in regards to that, we have today's topic, that is conservation of national threatened bird species. So for this session, we have our delegate speaker, Dr. Girish Jathar sir with us. So I would like to introduce you all to Girish sir. Girish sir holds a PhD in zoology with specialization in ornithology from University of Mumbai. He also holds a postgraduate degree in zoology with specialization in environmental biology of Shivaji University. In addition to this, he is also trained in GIS and remote sensing. Yes. Hello, everyone. So today is our 59th webinar of the webinar series, which we have started in August 2020. And the topic we are going to focus on is conservation of threatened bird species in India. So for today's topic, we have with us Dr. Girish Jathar sir. And I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Girish. So Girish sir is a PhD in zoology with specialization in ornithology from University of Mumbai. He also holds a postgraduate degree in zoology with specialization in environmental biology of Shivaji University. In addition to this, he is also trained in GIS and remote sensing from National Remote Sensing Center. Girish sir is a Deputy Director in Research and Researcher at Srushti Conservation Foundation and looking after development of programs on climate change, ecosystem-based adaptation, sustainable development, and landscape ecology. Previously, he has worked with Bombay Natural History Society, as we rightly know BNHS, for 12 years in various capacities. He was Assistant Director of Climate Change and Himalaya Program, Conservation of Central Indian Landscape Program, and Coordinator of ENVIS Program of BNHS from November 2015 to July 2021. He also coordinated 12 certificate courses during 2018 to 2020 under Green Skill Development Program of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. So Girish sir has more than 50 publications to his credits, comprising of scientific papers in peer-reviewed journals, popular articles, and scientific reports. He is having more than 20 years of experience in threatened birds, ecology, environmental information system, bird monitoring, satellite tracking, and ecological niche modeling. So he is well trained in public consultation programs, environment education, and climate change education. He is proficient in systems thinking and modeling dynamic systems. He has taught climate science at Management Education Center on Climate Change at Gujarat University from 2008 to 2010. Currently, he is a visiting faculty at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute Environment Education and Research, Pune. So Girish sir has been awarded with Ravi Sankaran Fellowship of INLAX, India Foundation in 2010. He has also received prestigious Young Ornithologist State Award in 2012. At present, he is Governing Council member of Salim Ali Center of Ornithology and Natural History in Coimbatore. He is a member of Species Survival Commission and Bustard Specialist Group, IUCN, and Senior Research Associate in Global Owl Project, USA. He is on editorial board of Indian Birds and referee of many Indian and international journals. So now we know why we have him today. This is his expertise, and we are looking forward to talk with him. I would like to tell all the viewers that they can also interact with our speaker, but through the comments. So if you have any questions, if you want to share any views, you can comment in the comment section under the video. So before starting, just please share this video and like the video. And you can hit the like button and share it to all your friends and family and relatives, so that this topic can reach to wider range and we can connect more people along with us and spread the knowledge. So welcome, Girish sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
associating with Purna Vision Foundation, and we are looking forward for the session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tanvi, and thank you very much, Purnam Ecovision Foundation, for giving me this opportunity. And I think we can start. I will share my screen. Tanvi, just give me a
Sure.
feedback when my screen is visible.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, it's a full screen mode.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a minute. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk about conservation of threatened bird species of India, and this entire presentation is divided into some parts. So first we'll talk about bird diversity of India, then what are threatened birds, near threatened birds in India, then why these birds are threatened is another part, then why we need to conserve the birds, and lastly I would like to take you to a very interesting subject, the impact of COVID lockdown on the wildlife, especially on the birds. So this is how I have planned my entire presentation, and let's start with the presentation. Yeah, hopefully you are able to view the full screen. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the overview of India. So India actually ranks on the number 9th in the entire bird diversity of the world. If we see the different birds species found in different countries, so India is on the 9th place. So it's not a bad number, because there are some equatorial countries which are having a more diversity than India, but India having a different biogeographic zones has a huge assemblage of birds. If we see at the just number of species in India, that is around 1340 species we have found till now. Of them, 94 are globally threatened, and it's a quite a huge number for a country like India. Then we have endemic birds, about 75 species or 79 species of birds which are endemic, which are not found elsewhere in the world. Then we have around 554 important bird areas we have identified, especially BNHS has done a wonderful work on important bird and biodiversity areas, and we have 554 such areas which are which are important in terms of conservation of the bird species. This entire thing actually covers 19 lakh 4,000 19,000 hectares of the square kilometer of the entire Indian subcontinent. Then we have 12 endemic bird areas. These are important for in many aspects, especially for the endemic bird species. Let's go to the next slide. And this is a summary of globally threatened and near threatened birds. So critically endangered, we have 16 birds which are critically endangered, 20 endangered species, 58 vulnerable species, 75 near threatened species, and one species is data deficient. And rest of the species, 1170 species, are either least concern, or information is not available in it, information on these particular species is available, but they are not considered as threatened as other bird species. So this is what the overview of entire India, threatened and near threatened species. Now let's see the category critically endangered. This is a very important category because all the birds in this particular category are highly threatened. and they need immediate conservation action. So Himalayan quail, the species is not seen since last more than maybe 100 years. And this is really very rare and very enigmatic species. It is only known from Uttarakhand, and everybody has heard about the name Nainital. So this bird is found in Nainital. Only few specimens of these birds were collected in 19th century, and fortunately one of them is in Bombay Naturalistic Society, and rest of the specimens are in overseas museums. There are hardly some people there hardly some people have seen this species in the wild. Nobody is alive right now from them, and very little information on its ecology is available. So that is why this species is very rare and difficult to find. Also, there were several expeditions carried out to relocate or rediscover the species, but nothing has happened till now, because the terrain in which the species lives is really difficult to conquer. That is why possibly the bird is still there, but we are not able to find it. So this is the legendary Himalayan quail. Then we have another interesting species, that is pink-headed duck, which is again not found since 1935. And if you could see on my right-hand side, there is a map of India, and there is a one arrow over here. So this arrow indicates the last known specimen, which was collected from West Bengal. Uh, Earlier, this bird used to found in several places like Assam, Bihar, Jharkhand, some part of Odisha also, and there are records of this bird from even Maharashtra. But unfortunately, the bird is not seen after 1935. There were some birds which were captured in the wild and kept in the England in a zoo, but they did not reproduce over there. So the attempt to do a conservation breeding of this particular species also failed miserably. Unfortunately, there are some records of this bird, but there is no confirmed record. That is why I said unfortunately. We do not have any confirmed record in recent years about this species. There are records, but they are not confirmed by the evidence of a photograph. So people say, because it really looks very similar to some of the commonly found ducks. So it is again a kind of a it's again a kind of a mystery about this bird. There is a possibility that this bird is found on the border of Arunachal Pradesh and Myanmar, or Nagaland and Myanmar, but still we need to get a photographic record for the existence of whether this bird exists or not. Just a minute. Yeah. Then Siberian crane, again another legendary species which used to breed in parts of Russia, northern Russia, and used to migrate to India, China, some parts of Iran, Afghanistan. Unfortunately, what has happened, there are two populations. The Western population is supposed to be extinct now. The only population which is left now is the Eastern population, which migrates to China, South Korea, and some parts. Unfortunately, the Western population, which used to migrate through Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan to India, that is almost wiped out. We don't know what are the possible reasons for that, but the most possible or probable reason is overhunting of this species, especially on its migratory route. You can see the countries which are actually it's a conflict zone, and there is no law which can prevent people from hunting the bird in these countries. That's why overhunting actually wiped out this particular population. You can see here on this map, the red color over here, it indicates that the species is extinct. Now native breeding, the birds is still breeding here, and they migrate here. So this is native non-breeding, or the area where they migrate from this particular region. Unfortunately, we had a good population of Siberian cranes visiting India, but slowly that wiped out. There are, I think, after 2000 or maybe in 1995 only, 1997, the last pair came to visited India, and then there is no record of this bird. Now, another very interesting species, Great Indian Bustard. Once upon a time, this bird was actually distributed throughout India, right from Punjab to Tamil Nadu. But because of the habitat degradation and hunting, this species is almost gone. And now there are hardly 100 birds alive. And there are about maybe 5, 6 birds in Gujarat, and rest of the birds are in Rajasthan. There are a couple of birds in Maharashtra and Karnataka, on Maharashtra and Karnataka border, but we are not yet confirmed whether they are still there or they are surviving or not. So this is the plight of Great Indian Bustard. Unfortunately, several attempts have been carried out, had been carried out by various institutes to protect this species, conserve this species, but nothing has come out. About 5 years ago, Wildlife Institute of India actually started a conservation breeding program in Rajasthan, and they have got a little success. But now the bigger question is, although we were able to breed them in captivity, how we are going to release them in the wild, and whether these birds will be surviving in the wild. Because the major issue with these birds is a transmission wires. The solar power plants or the wind power plants has to carry the electricity from one place to another place, and they have to carry it through the transmission lines. And these transmission lines have become a really a death trap for Great Indian Bustard, because their three-dimensional vision of this particular bird is really poor. So they don't understand while flying that there are transmission lines, and they hit those lines and dying. Similarly, some of the birds are actually going to Pakistan, and there is no control over there on hunting of the species. So whichever birds are visiting Pakistan are mostly getting killed by the people over there. So that is why the hunting and the transmission lines and the degradation of habitat is actually wiping out this entire population from India. Most probably, if the conservation breeding succeeds, then there is a chance for the species to survive. Otherwise, there is no hope for the species. That's very unfortunate, but the truth. Now, this is again another interesting species called Jordan's courser. Uh, it was endemic. It is endemic to India, and it was found in parts of Andhra Pradesh, on the Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and some parts of Maharashtra. The old records are from the Sironcha area of Gadchiroli from Maharashtra, but now this species is confined to the two places, Sri Lanka Malleshwara Sanctuary and Sri Peninsula Narsimha Sanctuary. But since last 10 years, there is a hardly any record of this bird from these two areas. We don't know whether this bird is still there or not, but it's possibly that the population has gone down so low that it is very difficult to see this species or revive this species now. So again, very interesting endemic species, but it is gone now. And the reason for its extinction would be the anthropogenic development in that area, because the Telugu Ganga Canal, which passes through the habitat of the Jordan's courser, is the prime reason for whichever population was left there has been wiped out, because the entire habitat is gone now. Hopefully, if the bird still survives, then we can do something to protect this particular species, but we don't know whether we will succeed or not. Now, Bayer's pochard, this is a migratory bird. You can see on the right hand side, these birds breeds here, parts of northern Korea, parts of Russia, China, and then they migrate to Northeast India and the Southeast Asia. Again, this is a very interesting and beautiful bird. It visits India, especially in Northeast India. And if you would like to see this bird, there are a couple of places where they come regularly. You can go to Assam in Maguri Motapang Bill area. Um, if you're lucky, you will be able to see this bird. A very interesting, very beautiful bird, Bair's pochard. Then you know this iconic species, the vultures. So there are three species I have listed here. There is one more. It is a slender-billed vulture. So these four gyps, Sarcogyps genus among the vultures, they have almost wiped out, and the reason behind that is a use of veterinary use of diclofenac. Sodium diclofenac is a painkiller and anti-inflammatory drug, which is generally given to the human beings as well as the cattle, the livestock. And if such livestock dies, which is treated with the diclofenac, and if the vultures eat that particular animal which is dead, then there is a possibility that 99.9% of the vultures will die if they eat the carcass of the animal which is treated with the diclofenac. Unfortunately, in India, what happens? The livestock, especially the big livestock, uh, whenever it falls sick, the people take these animals to the veterinary doctor in the last stage, and in last stage veterinary doctors treat them with the diclofenac, and this diclofenac is really lethal to the vultures, because if they eat it, then the vultures die because of kidney failure. BNHS did a wonderful work. I would like to mention especially Dr. Neeta Shah, who was a leader in this entire thing. She actually did a wonderful advocacy work, and there is a now ban on veterinary use of diclofenac. But there are still other drugs in the market which are as lethal as diclofenac to the vultures, and we have a lot of other problems. BNHS has done wonderful work on the conservation breeding program of these vultures. There are four conservation breeding centers in India, and BNHS has demonstrated a successful conservation breeding of these birds, and now they are releasing the birds in the wild. Hopefully, if the threat of diclofenac is minimized, then we may see the revival of vulture population in near future. Bengal florican, again, another interesting species, and I worked on this species in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. You can see the Tarai region of India, especially the river Ganga and Brahmaputra. The Tarai region in this entire landscape was once home of Bengal florican. Unfortunately, the habitat, especially in northern India, has gone down significantly. The habitat, the grasslands where the Bengal florican used to live, is now converted into the sugarcane farms, and it's very difficult for a species like Bengal florican to survive in sugarcane farms, because it needs a totally different kind of habitat. It needs a grassland, but not a very tall grassland. It needs a short grassland for breeding, and after breeding, they just go towards the edges of the forest where the grassland and forest merges. That kind of habitat they utilize. Now we still have a good population of Bengal florican, maybe 300 to 400 birds in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. But again, working there is very difficult. There are a lot of challenges. The Brahmaputra river is very dynamic. It is changing its course every time. And the river islands with the grasslands are the good habitats for Bengal florican. But because of the dynamic nature of the river, it is very difficult to actually find out the birds as well as reaching there, doing surveys. So there are a lot of logistic challenges. But according to the study which we have carried out, we think that there are around 200 to 300 bird, maybe 400 also, surviving in the northeast India. And there are some birds in Nepal and parts of Uttar Pradesh. So that's all about the Bengal florican. Again, the situation of Bengal florican is very critical because the numbers are not very promising. It is possible that if we don't do anything right now, we may lose these birds also, because this bird will follow the path of Great Indian Bustard. So this is about Bengal florican. Now, endangered is another category which is less vulnerable than the critically endangered birds. So we have a 20 birds here. I am giving just a representation of the birds because it is not possible to cover all the birds in the in one presentation. So forest owlet, I did my PhD work on this bird species. Uh, Earlier, this bird was in critically endangered category, but our work on this species, as well as the other people working on this species, have found out this bird at several places. So earlier, if you see, there are two triangles. The type specimen was collected from this region, and the second specimen was collected from here, and then some other specimens, 5 specimens were collected from the Nandurbar area of Maharashtra. But that happened in 19th century, and after that, the bird was considered extinct for 113 years. In 1997, Ben King and Pamela Rasmussen, they rediscovered this bird in Toranmal Reserve Forest here in Nandurbar district. And then Dr. Farah Ishtiaq worked on this species. After that, I carried out my PhD work in Nandurbar district. I also surveyed these areas and I found some birds over here in Melghat Tiger Reserve. And recently, one of my friends have located or discovered this species in Tansa Wildlife Sanctuary, which is just 90 kilometers north of Mumbai. And then several other people have found this bird in Gujarat, in Madhya Pradesh, and now the population seems to be quite good. And possibly, if we do further studies on the distribution of this bird, the bird may get delisted to vulnerable or maybe a near threatened category. Um, the only reason for this could be its similarity with the common spotted owlet, because it looks very similar to spotted owlet. Hence, uh, people may be seeing this bird in dry deciduous forests, but they are not able to identify it as a forest owlet. So this is interesting, and there are a lot of stories about forest owlet. I can go on talking for hours about this particular bird, but we do not have enough time for this. We may do it sometime again. So this is about the forest owlet. This is very interesting species. And very interesting part of this bird is behavior is it's a diurnal species. Most of the owls are nocturnal, means they are active during night time, but forest owlet is active during day and during the uh, early morning hours and late evening hours. It's not purely nocturnal species. So that's about the forest owlet. Manipur bush quail, again a very interesting bird. Unfortunately, there is no photograph of this species available because nobody has clicked this bird in the wild. So you can see the river Brahmaputra actually plays a part of a kind of a barrier between the distribution of the species. But if we see one population seems to be on the south side of Brahmaputra and the other population seems to be on the north side of the Brahmaputra. There are some reports of this bird from Manas Tiger Reserve here in Assam. One of my very good friends, Peter Lobo, has recently seen this bird, but unfortunately he could not photograph the bird. So this is the Manipur bush quail. Again, very difficult species. It's a very small bird. So though the bird is there, we will not be able to photograph it because it's very shy bird. It just runs away, and whenever we see them, we all either see them flushing from our feet or in flight. So that makes it very difficult to actually find this bird, and the bird may be there. We don't know. So we should be very hopeful for the Manipur bush quail. Now, lesser florican, we have already talked about Bengal florican. We have talked about the Great Indian Bustard, and lesser florican is again from the same family, having the same problems and having the same fate. So recent work on this species by WII and BNHS, uh, they found that the number of lesser floricans are really, really worrisome. And if nothing is done for the conservation of this species will also walk the path of Great Indian Bustard. Interesting thing about this particular species, they breed in this yellow portion. You can see in the map, yellow portion. They live here almost throughout the year, and then they migrate to these places. Again, this is a endemic bird species to the Indian subcontinent because it is found in Nepal as well. So this is Lesser florican, really gruesome conditions to its habitat. The habitat is getting degraded very rapidly, getting converted into the agricultural land, and whatever habitat is left is again having a different kinds of pressure, especially the savanna fires or the developmental projects and all that things which are which is the root cause of the development done by the human beings. Black-bellied tern and Egyptian vulture. Egyptian vulture is having a same problem as the other gyps vultures have, but they seems to be a little better, doing little better than the other vultures. Black-bellied tern, again, this species is dependent on the fresh waters, especially the rivers. And as our rivers are getting polluted, these birds are facing really big challenge. Again, these birds breed on the river islands, and islands have a sand, and sand is again a commodity, and sand is used for all kind of developmental purposes, and people are extracting sand with a really I would say really great pace, because all construction needs the sand, and the sand has become like a gold mine for people. So people are extracting sand from the river islands and the rivers, and this bird is getting affected. Now, the second challenge these birds are having is that if suppose there is a river island and there is water around it, then they are quite protected. But if there is a no water in the river, they how will they breed? Because the predators will have access to the river island. And dogs are the main predators of the eggs. So that is happening all over. So black-bellied tern is again facing a lot of challenges in terms of the river flow, the flow of river, the sand mining, the predation of its egg by dog, and the most important part is uh, the competition of human beings and a black-bellied tern for the fish. The fishing is also another big challenge for the species, because over exploitation of fish is actually impacting the breeding success of this particular species. Now let's go to the vulnerable species. We have 58 of them in India. And Sarasken, this is a legendary species. Everyone knows about this species because it has come into our Ramayana. The story of Saras, everybody knows. And this bird was once upon a time spread across all this entire region, but now their population is really localized, especially in Uttar Pradesh, parts of Madhya Pradesh, parts of Maharashtra, Gujarat. But they are now not a widespread species. They are localized in some patches. They particularly prefer the habitat which is kind of paddy field and the pond, nearby pond. So if there is a pond or a small reservoir and the paddy fields are there, the birds prefer to breed there. Fortunately, because of its connection with the Ramayana, people are not directly killing them, but the habitat degradation has become a real challenge for the species. It's a big bird, or I would say the tallest bird of India, and it needs kind of a habitat as well as the food. If that is available, then the bird will survive because people have sentiments about the birds. But if there is no habitat left for the species, where it will go? Nilgiri wood pigeon, now you see on the left hand side, they are endemic to Western Ghats and some parts of Eastern Ghats as well, but these birds are endemic to India, and they are nomadic. They don't stay at one place for a long time, so they move around the forest in search of food, especially the ficus fruits. And if you northern Western Ghats or northern part of Western Ghats, the population is relatively low. Uh, if you go to some areas near Pune, like Bhimashankar or Mulshi, or Tamini Ghat. If you are lucky, you will be able to see these birds. But if you want to be sure about sighting of this bird, then you need to go to Nilgiris, where you can find this species relatively very easily. Asian woolly neck stork, again, this bird is a wetland dependent species, and you can see the distribution of this bird in this graph. And you can see this bird actually spread across South Asia. But the population of this species is rapidly going down, and that is why it is considered as a under threatened category. This is again a wetland dependent species. It needs a wetland as well as the area nearby wetland. It feeds there. Sometimes you can see this bird in grassland as well, but there should be a wetland nearby. So this bird actually doesn't actually breed like other storks gregariously. So they are having a kind of a solitary nest, and there are a lot of issues with the habitat degradation, pollution of wetlands, and the I would say pressures of high transmission lines also, because there are cases in Solapur area of Maharashtra that these birds have collided with the transmission lines and died. And some really great work needs to be carried out on this particular species to understand what is happening to its habitat, or what is happening to its population. So this is Asian woolly neck, or it is also called as a white neck stork. Oh, this is very interesting species. BNHS and WI both are doing really good work on this particular species, and you can see this species is breeding in areas here, parts of Pakistan, Punjab, Delhi, and then we have a native population over here, a native resident population here in parts of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh. And then we have some visiting birds, or the birds that migrate here in Gujarat and on the west coast of Maharashtra. There are some birds which are also found in Odisha and some parts of Telangana. And then we have some species here, some populations here in Myanmar and Bangladesh. From Myanmar, they are migrating here. Some birds are migrating from this particular region to here and here also. So recently, BNHS carried out the ringing work on this species, and they found birds traveling to Gujarat. The birds which were ringed in Chambal area migrating to Gujarat, and some birds are migrating to Odisha and parts of Telangana. So they migrate again. They are facing similar problem as the black-bellied tern is facing. The issues are sand mining, pollution of river, predation by dogs, and direct threat to the habitat, and the reducing water in the rivers. So these are the some of the issues these birds are facing. A lot of good work is going on, but we need to protect the population of this particular species. Unless we do that, it is hardly possible to protect this species. And this species is a black-bellied tern and Indian skimmer. They are the indicator species of riverine ecosystem. If the riverine ecosystem is in good health, most probably you will see these birds there. Now, these are some other birds like lesser adjutant stork, which is here. If you go to Assam, you can easily see this bird. It's still quite common in Assam and parts of Bihar, West Bengal. But rest of the states is hardly found here. I have seen this bird recently in Pune, but there are hardly a few records from Maharashtra. Hardly 2 or 3 records are there from Maharashtra. Then we have a greater spotted eagle and great knot. So these are also vulnerable species. And again, we go to some very interesting species which are endemic as well as vulnerable. So yellow-throated bulbul. Again, this bird is confined to the southern India. So it's an endemic bird. And if everyone knows about the Tirupati hills or Tirupati Balaji temple, if you go to that area, you will probably see this bird. So that is an interesting part of it. But they are again confined to the southern part of India. They live in a scrub habitat, And again, they face the same problem as habitat degradation and other possible pressures. Then we have very interesting bird called green avadavat or green munia. It is also called as a tiger finch, that is its trade name. And this bird was once widespread, but now it is confined to only 4 or 5 places in entire India. And if you want to see this bird, you need to go to Mount Abu in Rajasthan, because a small population is surviving there. BNHS is doing a good work on this species. They are doing a conservation breeding program in Rajasthan. Unfortunately, uh, the number has gone down so much that it is very difficult to succeed in the conservation breeding program unless and until some heroic efforts are done to save the species. This species has the population of this species has gone down, especially because of the uh, illegal trade. Because one pair of green avadavat would cost around 1,000 to 1,500 dollars. So it's a huge amount, and because of that, this populations of this bird have been wiped out from its habitat. So that's the situation. Then we have a pale cap pigeon, again rare bird species found in Eastern Ghats. Now, near threatened species, we have 75 of them. Some of the pictures I have placed here. Not, I cannot put all the pictures, but some of them are here. You can see the Oriental darter. It's again a wetland bird. We have a river tern. We have a river lapwing. We have a Eurasian curlew. We have a black-tailed godwit, pallid harrier, Eurasian thickney, uh, black-headed ibis, and we also have a ferruginous duck. So these are some of the near threatened species. And let's now go to see what are the which is one of only one data deficient species here. So large-billed reed warbler is a very interesting bird. Warblers are very difficult to identify, and this is one of them. It resembles to two species of the warblers, Blythe's reed warbler and uh, Indian reed warbler. But the size is intermediate, and unless and until you catch this bird, take the measurements, you will not be able to say this is the large-billed reed warbler. Although the song of this bird is different, so you can identify this bird with the help of song, but you should have a very keen ear for that, and that is why this bird is a data deficient. It may be there, but we are not able to identify it properly. So again, this bird was considered extinct, but it resurfaced in Thailand in 2000. And from there are a couple of records from India. But interestingly, if you see the story of this bird was first described from India only by Alan Hume. And he collected some specimens from Shimla region of Himachal Pradesh. But after that, there are no records. But again, for India, it's a kind of a very interesting species because it resurfaced after so many years, but still it is data deficient. Now let's see what are the threats to the birds. The major threat to all the birds is the encroachment on forest and grassland habitats. You can see here, this is a picture from Nandurbar region. You can see on the right hand side, this is a boundary of reserve forest. On left hand side, the entire land is encroached, and if you see the slope of this land, it's really dangerous, because if there is now rainfall, the entire soil on this particular surface will come down. However, this will not happen on the right hand side, because on the right hand side you still have a good amount of forest. So this type of degradation is really detrimental for the forest bird species as well as the other bird species which are dependent on the forest. But if you see here, now the grassland habitat is now turned into a sweet lemon farm, the horticulture, dry land horticulture. So dry land horticulture initiative, though it is beneficial for the human beings, it has actually encroached on the grassland birds, and the status of grassland birds in India is really pathetic. They are into great danger, because whatever land which is flat is now getting encroached by human beings for various purposes. And dry land horticulture is one of the one of the I would say threats to the species. Interestingly, if you see the biogeographic zones of India, Deccan Plateau is the largest one. It covers 65% of entire India, and that 65% is nothing but scrubland, dry deciduous forest, and grasslands. And we are encroaching them at a really great space. Illegal logging, everyone knows about it. So logging is going on in the forest, and that is detrimental to the species. People are setting fires also. Mining is another really big challenge for the species, because it not only destroys it, it actually wipes out everything from the surface of earth. You can see here, um, it's a stage different stages or steps of mining, and people have actually extracted everything, and this becomes a really unsuitable habitat. Nothing grows here, and this becomes a vacant. It becomes also a dead trap for the mammals, because animals can fall here and cannot come out. And for birds also, if you see here, there is nothing on which birds can feed or live. So that's the mining, which is the most dangerous of all the habitat degradation issues. Poaching, we have already talked about it. Here you can see the picture of a green avadavat in the cage. Here you can see some traps, and poaching and bird trade is a really big challenge. The new policies on pet birds is again going to become a very detrimental for the Indian birds, because there are a lot of regulations now to keep the pet birds at your home. And if that is stopped, the illegal market will open, and there will be more demand for the Indian bird species than going for the regular birds, which are budgerigars or lovebirds. If you are not able to keep them as a pet, you will hide them. You want to keep the pet, because it's a part of India's culture. We can still see a lot of people keeping the parakeets at their home, because it's a part of Indian culture, and people want to live with the birds. But that has a negative face as well, because if there is a ban, then the prices will shoot up, and then prices will shoot up. There will be incentive for the illegal trappers or poachers for catching the birds. So it's a vicious cycle, and we really need to look at it from a different perspective. Urbanization and linear infrastructure development, we know, you can see, once upon a time, this is a picture from Hyderabad region. uh, Once upon a time, this was a very good grassland for the grassland birds, but now what has happened is a highway as well as the development over here. Similarly, this picture is from the Madhya Pradesh. This is a forest outlet habitat, and the road is passing through it, and again, that's detrimental for the habitat of the species as well as the species itself. Forest fires is a really big challenge for especially for the dry deciduous forest in India and some parts of Himalayan forest. It's relatively less in the southern Western Ghats, but again in northern Western Ghats, it's a really big challenge. It actually destroys everything, and because of the forest fires, the invasive species grow more rapidly than the native species, and they further degrade the habitat. So forest fires are the bigger challenges. Climate change, we talk about it, it has become a sugar coated word, but people don't realize the real impact of it, because uh, it impacts human being as well as the bird species or the wildlife in a very very different way. As humans, we can sense few things, like we are sensing the increasing frequency of the cyclones on our west coast, the heat waves in northern India, in central India. So that's all what we face, or the cloud burst which happen in Himalayan region. But birds and other animals, they feel it very differently. That impact their physiology, and the physiology, if there is impact on physiology, then there is impact on a breeding. Similarly, there is a mismatches between uh, the insect emergence or insect population, which is required for these birds to survive and reproduce. So there is a mismatch between the breeding season of the bird and the breeding season of the insects. So If there is a change in that, then the species will not, the bird species especially, will not be able to reproduce properly. If suppose they are producing four chicks in a season, now they are able to do only one. So that is going to impact their population severely. We have seen this in Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, and it's a really great challenge. And actually, there is no solution for this unless we create some buffers or more protected areas at a higher altitude so that the species would survive. But again, we are seeing a rampant kind of a development happening at a high altitude Himalayas. So that's again a really big challenge for the bird species. Now, why we should conserve the birds? What really matters? So what really matters is the ecosystem services, and the ecosystem services are provided by the habitats, and the habitats are the areas where these bird lives. So ecosystem services provides us what? There are four types of ecosystem services: supporting, provisioning, regulating, and culturing. If we see supporting, photosynthesis, habitat, biodiversity, soil formation. So these are the supporting uh, ecosystem services. Provisioning is water provisioning, like our provision store, Kirana store, where we get our food. So we get a water from the ecosystem. We get food, some medicines we get from the ecosystem. Then we also get a raw material, which is essential for our living. Then let's come to the regulating system. uh, we see pollination, which is very important for most of our crops and fruits. Cleaning of water and air, that is again a very important. Naturally, the cleaning happens. We do not need to pay for that. Climate regulation, if there is a good habitat, good protection, then the climate is also controlled. If you go to Arunachal Pradesh, the habit, or I would say the forests are still intact, and the climate is really fantastic there. But if you come to other places like developed areas, like cities like Mumbai, Pune, the climate is horrible. The weather is horrible there. Again, flood control. If the forests are in good condition, the flood can be regulated very easily. But now we are seeing a lot of incidences of flash floods, the cloud burst, and there is no forest to stop that cloud burst or the flash floods, and there is a damage to the human beings and uh, what I would say, the human infrastructure as well. Now the cultural, which is very important, aesthetics. We go to the forest to get relief from our stress. Spirituality, if we see our Vedas and the Upanishads and the philosophy behind that, the entire spirituality actually originates in nature. So for spirituality also, we need the forest or the ecosystems. Recreation, we go for trekking, cycling, and all other adventure sport. So we need ecosystems for that. And the education, which is more important. We take people to the forest to educate them about the environment and all that thing. I would say uh, I was a part of that education, what I would say, education trips to the forest, because from there I got an inspiration to become a to do my pursue my career in this field. So these are the ecosystem services. If you see what are the ecosystem services which actually we get from the birds: water, regulation of climate, fertile soils, pest control, um, and again living and livelihood for local communities, because ecotourism is again a very interesting phenomena which is happening, which is providing the livelihood to the local people, because people are going there to see the birds and they are getting income from that, so that they will protect the habitat as well as won't kill the birds. Then cultural and aesthetic values. So these are the things which we get from conserving the birds. Let's see how COVID-19 induced lockdown has improved our understanding on bird conservation. So this is a paper which was published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution in 2020, and that paper actually narrates a very interesting thing. How does lockdown has impacted the wildlife? So what the authors have found that the reduced human mobility during this particular time of lockdown was a critical aspect of our impact on animals, because we have seen a lot of videos that bison is coming out in the city, elephants are coming, the civet cat is coming. So all these animals, they were spreading because they were trying to reclaim their original habitat. And similar project is actually going on in Europe. The project is called as a rewilding the Europe, and the concept is the same. I will go to those slides further, but this particular study actually gave a glimpse on how best we can share our space with the animals, and that is very important. And the lockdown effect is called as anthropopause. We are living in Anthropocene. The era is the Anthropocene, but the lockdown effect is the anthropopause, and we have seen a lot of good things, like pollution levels in our cities has gone down significantly, and several other things. People started hearing the bird calls, and the next slide talks about it. This picture is of a white crowned sparrow, and this bird was living in nearby cities. Actually, the noise actually changed their songs, but the pandemic really transform the bird song in a different way. So these are some of the interesting examples which we have heard during the pandemic, and pandemic actually gave us a glimpse that how we can go ahead with the conservation of birds as well as conservation of entire ecosystems, and how that will benefit us. So see the picture of flamingos from Mumbai, thousands of flamingos, and you can see at the backdrop there are a lot of buildings, but flamingos are there, and this happened because there is no traffic on the road, there are no peoples. Finweaver, again, this is a endangered species, and we found that because of the lockdown, uh, they started breeding in a place which was not known, or which was known, but after a period of maybe 40 years, Finweaver came back and started breeding in this particular region. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose this place because this bird is very rare, and again, it has a threat of poaching. So I cannot disclose this here, but this happened somewhere in Uttarakhand. Very interestingly, Satire tragopan, it's a very shy bird, and it hardly comes out on the roads, but these are some of the pictures. During the lockdown period, the birds started coming out on the roads. So these are the really fascinating or fantastic results which we observed during the lockdown period. And I would recommend this book for all of you to read this book. It's a very interesting book. The title itself says The World Without Us. And this current lockdown condition gave us a glimpse of how wildlife can take over the landscape if they are not disturbed. And what could be the possible way out for us is this: rewilding the landscape. So if you see here, this is a scenario of 2017 where the monoculture crops and people are actually utilizing the habitat in a different way to benefit all of us. In 2050, if we stop these activities and allow the nature to rejuvenate itself, so this will happen. And for that, we need to go for some other alternatives like urban farming or vertical farming in the cities, and disturb the wild areas or the landscape much less. If we do that, then what will happen in 2000, 2100 years, after a long process, this entire planet will be a different. There will be less pollution, there will be less impact of climate change, and the sustainability and long-term survival of wildlife as well as human being will be ensured. So this is the concept from where we can grow from our current condition, current I would say resource utilization to the sustainable resource utilization. So this path we can take. If we take this path, it will be good for birds as well as for the human beings. Yeah, so these are the acknowledgements from where I got all this information. And thank you very much. And I'll stop sharing my screen and we can have a questions.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for the wise words and this session. We could really see good pictures, and also thanks to all the photographers who have spotted these birds and taken such good pictures for us. We do have some questions. The first is, are there any migratory waders species that are under threat?
Yeah, there are several. I already talked about the red knot, then curlew. So there are a lot of migratory bird species. There are ducks, there are waders, there are forest birds. So a lot of birds are there which are migratory and which are threatened.
Okay. Secondly, the question is about green abbot. So we already saw the cause of decrease, which is poaching. But what kind of conservation techniques can be followed to conserve them? And is BNHS carrying out in situ conservation?
Yes, BNHS is doing the work. One of my ex-colleague, Dr. Rajat Bhargava, he is doing work on that. And breeding munia is not a very difficult thing. We can actually, if you have a right kind of a environment, right kind of a food with you, you can breed them in your house also. So it's not a big science to breed them. It is a relatively easy, but you need to have a really concentrated efforts to do that. You need to have a willpower.
Okay. Another question is the practices which we do, like we sometimes feed the birds, we keep some food outside our windows for the birds to, come and eat. So is this a good practice, or is it anyway harmful to the birds?
It's again kind of an ethical question from a my perspective, from a scientist perspective, it is not good to feed the birds, especially the food which is not bird food. We are feeding them with our food. I have seen the crows and the pigeons. They are feeding on kurkures. Kurkure is not a food of a crow or a pigeon. So we should not feed the bird with the food which we eat or the fast food. Unfortunately, that is happening, and that is actually having a really bad impact on the bird species. Because bird cannot eat rice, bird cannot eat the grains or chapati. So it's not a good practice to feed the birds, especially the birds which are commensal to human being. Even we feed the sparrows with the grains, that is still okay, but not the food which we eat. So there are a lot of feeders also. People put feeders at their home, and they have the seed mixture. So that is okay, relatively okay, but we need to assure that whether the birds are eating the food or squirrels are eating it.
Right, right. Yes, absolutely. For the time being, we'll consider last question. The question is, what are the opportunities in this field and what students can do in these fields?
Yeah, there are several opportunities in this field, and maybe in near future it will have a great, I would say, a revival, uh, particularly the green jobs, I would say, and there is a bright future in bright future for this particular field in foreseeable future. Whatever what I would say, because things are changing rapidly, people are getting more and more aware, and there are a lot of good opportunities popping up everywhere throughout the world. But for pursuing this field, again, you need to have a patience. I have seen a lot of people coming in this field, but they don't have patience. Um, you have to be off what I would say social media. You need to be ready to work in the forest for maybe 3 4 years without electricity, without internet. Unfortunately, the young generation which I am seeing, they can't live without internet. And if you want to do some real good work, you need to go in the forest without internet. Stay there, do some good work. If you are ready for that, if you are committed, then this field is for you. But if you want to do some, just photograph yourself in the forest, put it on the Facebook and get likes, then this field is not for you, because it's a really hard field. Not only from the physical point of view, but you also need to have a particular mentality for doing these kind of jobs. It's not everyone's cup of tea. So that is what I would say. But it is really satisfying job. You will get a lot of mental peace if you follow that. Yeah, that is what I would like to say.
Yes, yes, right. Totally agreed. So we have many comments saying that it was a great session and very informative session. So people are thanking you for this session, and also we are also grateful to you for sparing your valuable time and being with us, associating with Purnam Ecovision Foundation. So thank you so much, Girish sir, for today's session. We really appreciate it, and we are grateful for this session.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Purnam Ecovision, yeah, for giving me this opportunity. Yeah.
To all the speakers, we are going to continue these sessions every Saturday, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Next time is our 60th webinar. So do not forget to watch. You have already been supporting us throughout these weeks. So we still need your support, and keep sharing these videos. We post the flyer prior 2 to 3 days prior to the webinar. So share the flyer and let us connect to more people through this wise and noble deed, which we are trying to conserve nature and environment. So yes, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you for watching.